Hello guys, welcome back to Dragon Exotics, and today I have a story for you. Yes, it's educational, and yes, it's kind of fun. For some of you, it might be a little bit boring. That's okay. Look at the birds, they're funny. Yeah, they're great. Anyways, this is Ember, my 2.5-year-old Scarlet Macaw, and this is Fumble. High five, Fumble. High five? Yeah, thanks. Here's a treat. Fumble is my 4.5-year-old blue and gold macaw. Yes, they are both fairly young, and yes, I know that they will be maturing fairly soon as they hit those lovely ages of 7 to 12 where their hormones kick in, and they might be feisty and difficult to train during those years. But this is supposed to be fun, and so we're going to be talking about Ember's story. But just for a quick comparison, let's go over how I got Fumbles, because some people don't realize how you even get a bird like this. And there's a few different ways. Adoption is definitely one of them, and so are stores. So Fumbles, I met her at a store that I used to go to for my reptile stuff, and they had birds there all the time. But one day I walked in and there's this like square in the middle of the room, and here Fumble was in this square. And I don't know, my heart kind of just attached. I don't know if it was because she was a baby bird or what, but it happened. Okay, I brought Fumbles home. She's here. She's great. She's a very happy and crazy bird. Now, when I had her at the store, she was 8 weeks old, and I helped wean her at the store, hand feed her, and work with her until she was 12 weeks old and fully weaned onto veggies and solid food. There was a time at the store where she actually, because she was still learning how to balance on my arm, and you want to go here? Okay, buddy. Here, but you might want to go down here. Yep, thank you. So she was still learning how to balance on my arm, and one of those days she decided to take a little flight. Yeah, she flew around the store, whammed into a window. She was perfectly fine. But those are some dangers of flighted birds. They can hurt themselves if they're not properly trained. And she had no flight training at that point, so it was kind of scary. But she's fully trained now. We've worked with her a lot, and she's pretty good about it. She wants a treat right now. I've got a handful of treats, and they want them. But that's her story. She's never been clipped a day in her life. She's a little bit spoiled, but don't worry, I do train her. She does know the difference between good things and bad things. She's a smart bird. She knows the word no. Like, she understands. And that is sometimes what happens when you have two macaws. That's the reality of it. You want to prevent fights when they look horrible. But that was just a quick little beak. So let's get started on Ember. How did I get Ember? Well, initially we wanted a friend for Fumbles because I believe that birds, they are flock animals and they should have other birds in their life. As a human, we cannot provide them with everything they need mentally, if that makes sense. Someday they need a mate, and the mate can give them things that humans can't. So we had been looking for a friend for Fumble for a while, and we were searching through the adoption places, and one of the adoptions near us looked great. There were so many birds we wanted to take home there, and when we actually wanted to make the process official, we learned that the lady apparently makes you sign a contract that you'll bring the bird in every 3 to 6 months to get their wings clipped. And that doesn't sit well with me, because when you clip a bird's wings, they're not getting the exercise that they need to help maintain a healthy heart, liver, body condition, muscle. And if they're on a horrible diet on top of that, they can be predisposed to obesity and fatty liver disease and arthritis too. So I didn't agree with it at all. I tried to convince her. I tried to even see if it could be a special case so I could save one of these birds, get them flighted, give them a good life. But all she saw was people letting birds fly away. And it was really sad because none of those birds will ever be able to fly. And I can't do anything about it. I gave her research. I told her that I'm in the veterinary field. It was just really sad. So I couldn't adopt from there like I originally had hoped. Fast forward a few months, my husband and I were on our anniversary trip. Fumble on the camera. And during that trip, I met Ember at a store, there we go, at a store that we were originally looking for a perch for. But during that time, we had been having our eyes out everywhere for a young bird that would do well at Fumble, that we could hopefully give a better life and work with them. Normally, I don't like going through stores. You know, I like to save a bird if I can. I know a lot of people are like, oh, adopt, don't shop. But in my eyes, those birds are gonna go to a home either way. I don't know what she's doing. Those birds are gonna go to a home either way, and I would rather have them not have to suffer than them going to a home and suffering and having to live a horrible life and then getting rehomed and going through all that, because no matter what we do, people are still gonna sell birds. You would have to have 100% of the bird community to adopt for breeders to go away. And then even in that case, then people are gonna want more birds. The demand for birds might then bring up the whole original problem of people taking birds from the wild. So it's like this endless cycle. So in my brain, why not just go to a store and get a bird that you're gonna save from having a horrible time? So that's my take on it. Okay. I do like it. That's what happens when you're trying to make videos with birds. So I do like to adopt, which is why I had tried to adopt, a friend for Fumble. Obviously the person didn't let me. So during that anniversary trip, we were looking for a perch and we came across this little boy. Now they had told us that, so at the time he was a year old, barely a year old, and he had already been to 2 different stores. And they told us that they were about to ship him to the next store to try and get him sold. Because apparently he's been at all these stores and they could not get him adopted. Oh my goodness. The bird is on top of our little camera. So, and I felt bad because, so here he was on this little stand. He couldn't explore. I mean, yes, he'd have human interaction and he could see them, but who knows if they were even gonna respect his privacy. They're probably reaching out, trying to grab him, pet him, and he might not have liked that. It was a tiny little circle. What are you guys doing? You're crazy. Yeah, a little crazy right now. So he was in that little situation, tiny circular perch. He couldn't really go anywhere. And below him was a bowl full of junk food. I'm talking shelled peanuts, which shelled peanuts they are a risk for Aspergillus in birds and other species, which are a fungus that can cause a respiratory infection along with plaques and other issues in their mouth. You don't want it, it's not fun, and it's definitely not good for them. And shelled peanuts are a perfect environment when kept in dirty conditions to grow that specific spore. So it was full of that, seeds, really no pellets, no vegetables. It was a pretty bad diet and not great for a young growing bird. So we decided to take a closer look at him. We hung out with him for a few hours, and normally I like to visit the birds every day. Like for Fumbles, I was there for weeks hand feeding her. But for him, he didn't have weeks. He was gonna be gone in that store the next day. And we kind of just felt like he was the one, and we wanted to take him home for Fumble. He was young, he was only a year old. He has plenty of time to learn how to be a bird. And so that's what we worked towards. His wings were clipped, and they weren't clipped that properly either. It was pretty sad. So he didn't know how to fly. No, you didn't know how to fly. And he didn't really know how to do things for himself either. And that's right, Ember. He was not this bird that you see today. Now, he is a Scarlet Macaw. And if you hadn't noticed, Scarlet Macaws tend to be a little bit more nippy, and they do require much more training with their beak than blue and golden macaws. He's not bad. He's pretty well bite trained at this point. He didn't used to be, but he takes a lot so for him to be able to enjoy cuddles or anything like that. And when he tries to get attention, he might nip a little bit too hard. And as you can see, he's reaching over here, so I'm gonna do that. I don't want to stimulate him too much. And he was clipped. He was on a junk diet. He wasn't mentally stimulated how he should have been. Barely any toys on his little cage either. So what we did is we brought him home. Hooray! There went our budget. And we brought him home and we tested him for all the diseases, as you should when you bring home a new bird. We didn't necessarily quarantine, but we did wait for all the test results to come back before we put them together. And Fumbles was kind of unsure of Ember at first, but they eventually, they're okay. They're okay with each other. They don't hate each other. Sometimes they'll play, but usually they'll keep their distance. Now they'll fight for attention. But the problem with Ember is that Fumbles was always cuddly, wanted to do things. She wanted to explore. She wanted to step from this perch to the next. And her training went super easy. Like target training, she was great at that. Recall training, she did it in her first week. She built that confidence to jump onto my hand that first week. She was a wonderful case. Ember, on the other hand, was the complete opposite. What are you doing, buddy? What? You want to jump. I know you do. Yes, I agree. And there's Fumble. That's just how this is going to be. Anyways, so we're back after Fumble tried to eat and destroy the camera. If you hadn't gotten it from my last video, birds are very destructive. So you can tell them no all you want. You can train them all you want. Sometimes they just won't listen to what you say. So back to Ember. His problem was that Fumble was great when she was young. She recalled great. She was good when it came to training. She was like, you watch those videos and you try it on her, and she's like the perfect student. Yeah, I didn't have many issues. Lots of repetitive training, and she did wonderful. Ember didn't work that way. I tried for 5 months straight just to get him to hop from here to here. Yeah, now you want to do it. Thank you. Good job, buddy. See, I tried for that long and he did not make any progress. He refused to jump. He had a stand right next to him. Yes, I'm sorry, I'm not telling you to step up. I know you're getting very confused and very fluffed up. I know. He had a stand right next to him. He had a whole room. He had plenty of places to go. I made sure I tied ropes to everything so he can get everywhere. Like if he wanted to walk everywhere, he could. He would not walk. He would not go to another rope perch. He would not go to a regular perch. He would not go to anything on his own. I had to pick him up and bring him there. He refused to do anything on his own. And that was pretty sad because here we have Fumble flying around this room and he's just afraid to do anything because he was stranded on a tiny little perch his whole first year of his life. He doesn't know any different. And because he didn't learn to fly at a young age, part of his hippocampus did not develop as properly as it should. And that's what happens when a bird does not learn to fly when they are supposed to. That's an angry bird, just so you know. So he didn't learn to fly when he should have, and he is a little slow because of that. But he wouldn't do anything on his own. He refused to do anything on his own. And it took a lot of time. I normally like to start training with target training, and then you try to get them to step up, in which he did okay stepping up. He was a little nippy. But then you can transition from perch to perch or perch to hand. And he wouldn't do either. He just wouldn't. And so we had trained so long, and eventually we got to the 8-month mark. He just was not picking up concepts. He was learning words. He was stepping up great. That's Fumble. But he just wouldn't step onto another perch or jump. He would not jump for the life of him. I tried so many different ways, up, down, to the side, floor up. Like I tried everything. He wouldn't jump, and eventually, like 8 months passed, and I noticed on the camera he was finally starting to explore, and he had like half jumped and flew onto a couch, and I was like, oh my gosh, did he just try to fly? And so it took him almost a year to actually want to do something, to realize that he is not held captive sorry buddy, to realize that he is not held captive to this little perch anymore, and that he can do things, and that he has a brain for himself. It was completely different than Fumble. And so once he learned that, he started flying more short distances on his own. And so I would still try to make sure I'm trying that A to B recall with perches to see if he would jump. He still wouldn't. He just wasn't confident. He was in that falling, flying stage, which is not an ideal place to start. It's kind of backwards if you look at the training method, but that's what had to happen. So we went backwards. He learned how to fly. That's Fumble. And he started to try and fly to us. And after that, once he was flying through the room. Slowly but surely, he was able to fly from our hand to a perch. Before perch to perch, he was able to actually launch himself from our hand, fly, and learn the skills to land on a perch, which was pretty cool. After he did that comfortably and started flying around the room comfortably, we started working A to B perch training, or perch to our hand, and he was doing it. He was flying to the perch and to us. And now, after a year and a half, we've had him a year and a half, now we're finally working on proper recall training. We tried recall training when he was on the floor and he would waddle to us. It wasn't the same. He wouldn't fly to us, he would waddle. But now he's been flying for a few months and he's doing recall training really well. And so, oh geez, there's Fumble. Okay, there's birds and Fumble and craziness. Lovely. There we go. So he will now fly on command. When we call his name, he will fly to us. It's not great recall. It's not as good as hers. Hers is about 90% outdoor recall when she's on her flights. But Ember, on the other hand, indoors, gotta get her out of my hair. Indoors, he's been doing great. And it's taken a long time, but it just shows you what happens when you clip a bird's wings. And it halts that development of their brain to a very significant amount. It's almost like two different birds. Now, yes, the blue and gold is very silly, fun, different personality, and a scarlet has a different personality. You're not wrong. They are going to be two different birds. However, a bird should never be afraid to do what they want, to jump to a different perch, to have a will of their own. When you clip a bird's wings, you limit them to what they feel they can do, and eventually they stop trying to do stuff. It's possible. He was afraid of the ground at first when we first got him, and I think it's because he fell. He probably fell a few times at the store. He might have got spooked by a kid, might have got spooked by a person. Either way, he fell and was afraid of the ground. That could have been why he was so hesitant to jump to a different perch, which, yeah, it's pretty sad. But when you clip their wings, that's what I'm talking about. You're making it so they don't want to do any of that. They're afraid to do stuff. If they don't learn to fly at a young age, their hippocampus does not form properly. That's part of the brain, if I didn't mention it. And they don't know how to bird. Hence the title of the video. They do not know how to bird. They won't try to fly on their own. They won't try to jump to another perch. Now, in some cases when they've been clipped for years and years and years, they might not make a process like Ember did. They might not ever figure out how to be a bird properly, and they might just climb on things the rest of their life once they get used to things, or they'll just rely on humans to move them everywhere. It depends on the bird. Some do okay, some not so much. Ember was a not so much okay bird. And what are you doing? Fumbles is crazy. So clipping your bird's wings, it's not good for them. They need the exercise. They need that muscle, those pectoral muscles to be developed for flying. Wow, yeah, that's right. And they really just need it for stimulation too. Birds are meant to fly. Why get a flying creature if you're not gonna let them fly? And I'm pretty big about that. These guys are magnificent flyers, and when you train them to fly, if they ever got out, their chances of escaping a predator are significantly better than one whose chances, well, who was not trained to properly fly. Let's say they just got their flight feathers in and they went flying, but they don't have the skills to dodge a predator. That's one way. Or you think your bird is clipped, but you let them outside. Just because they're clipped does not mean they're going to gain air. And the wind can pick them up and they will be gone. They can't navigate away from the predators, so they're bird food. Yep. Pretty sad. Okay, moral of the story is, if you haven't figured it out by now, birds are meant to fly. You see wild birds, they are flying all day long, foraging for food. They are working those muscles. They got nice pectoral muscles. Fumbles, she has nice pectoral muscles, but if she was a wild blue and gold macaw, I can guarantee that her muscles would be even stronger than they are. Hello, Ember. What are you doing? He's working on it. It's complicated. His muscles are definitely better than they were when I first got him. But birds are meant to fly. They fly so that they get exercise. It's healthy for them. When humans exercise, it's better heart function. We are healthier. It improves the entire body. It's very similar for birds. You can help them from getting obese. When they're obese, it can make them more prone to arthritis, especially when they don't fly. They're walking on their feet all day. Depending how they're on their feet, it could make them more prone to arthritis when they get older. It also could pose a risk for them getting fatty liver disease. Oh yeah? Fatty liver disease, where if they're not being fed the right diet in addition to lack of exercise, they can just be prone to that. It could also lead to heart issues. So it's all a big jumble of effects. So just think of what happens when the human body doesn't get exercise, and it's very similar to that, just with a bird. They need to eat healthy and they need to fly. For birds, it's different. I mean, then again, maybe there are people out there who can't walk or do anything, but I think that's kind of sad. And if these birds, these healthy birds, I mean, they're born to fly and they have this instinctual desire to fly. And when they're young and they're clipped, they try to fly they try to fly and they fall, and then they're in pain. And then they don't want to try again, because every time they try to fly, they end up in pain or seriously injured. And we don't want that, because that's sad, and they deserve to fly. And flying is also mental stimulation for these guys. It keeps them active all day, and it's just good for them. We talked about how when they don't learn to fly, it degrades part of their hippocampus, or it doesn't lead to proper development of that hippocampus, which is a part of the brain. So, yeah. Moral of the story is, I think birds are supposed to fly. I've said it enough. But that's Ember's story. Ember finally learned how to bird. He learned how to forage for treats. He has learned how to fly. He has learned to do things on his own without me having to move him everywhere, which is a huge step. He has personality now. When I got him, he was like a blob on a perch. He did not, okay guys, calm down. He did not want to do anything. Like, it was very difficult to get him to want something, even treats. Like, he didn't want anything. It was very difficult. But now he has his own personality. He gets jealous of Fumble when Fumble gets attention. She gets jealous of him. They work pretty well together. Yes, I hear you. Yep, I know. But he's doing well. And I think the biggest thing we're not doing that right now. The biggest thing we're working on with him is really just getting him to work on that recall training, and of course, basic training skills. Remember to towel train your birds. Try to medication or syringe train your birds so that they're easier when you bring to the vet. And plenty of other training, like high five. Hey, Fumble, you want to show the camera? High five. This isn't good. High five. Thanks, good girl. Okay, we're not doing that. You're very stimulated. Stimulated birds act like this. Okay, I'm glad you noticed that. Also, he's a little stimulated too. If you hadn't noticed, he's a little more fluffy, leaning in. He sees Fumble and he wants to beak wrestle her. So he's definitely displaying signs of not a calm, still bird. Anyways, that's all for this video. Sorry it was a little bit long, but hopefully you learned a little bit about Ember. Okay, and the effects that clipping a bird's wings may have and how these two birds are crazy different. He's also not as spoiled, I've noticed. This one is. That's all for now. Stay tuned for next week's video, and we may be talking a bit about the preening gland in birds. Bye!